Hello everyone, my name is Janice Kootenay and I am a social work student, as the rest of you are. I'm here with Candice Henderson, who has her MSW, that we're going to talk a little bit about the work she does with children's mental health. So we're just going to get started. Her and I have been visiting here for the last hour and a half or so in hopes to prepare for this interview. So hopefully we remember everything that we've already talked about. But here we go. So I'm going to start just asking Candice some questions, and I hope it goes okay. So Candice, can you share with my classmates where you work and your title right now?
Okay, so I work with Alberta Health Services, and my title is a mental health therapist with children and adolescents.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great work. I'm wondering if we could talk about the roles and responsibilities of a children's mental health therapist here with AHS. What is it you do?
You know, there's multiple things that we do. We meet with children anywhere from 5 years old all the way to 18. But in that, you're working with families and parents and different agencies within the community. And then we also have an interdisciplinary team that we work with within our clinic. So there's psychiatry, there is disordered eating, sensory. There's someone who will do like assessments for autism and stuff like that. There's a lot of different members on our team.
Yeah. Right. So at one time, they were engaging an occupational therapist even to help out with...
Yeah, we do have an occupational therapist.
Yeah.
And it's really helpful because
Yeah.
we actually see a lot of children that have sensory needs, right? They're overstimulated in different areas. And then we can support them within the schools because then the schools understand. So
yeah. So in terms of when a client is coming to children's mental health, it starts off with a phone call, with an assessment. How does that work?
Okay, so initially the parents will actually call like a main line and they'll do an assessment with someone outside of our clinic and they'll rate whether they're a fit or not for our clinic. And then they meet with us and we'll do an assessment, gather consent, give them information on how often we meet, how long we meet with them, all of those different things. And once that's all signed and all that information is gathered about the family, you know, history, all of that kind of stuff, then we try to meet with them every 2 weeks if possible. Sometimes it's up to 3 depending on our caseload. Yeah.
Okay. One of the areas that we're going to talk a little bit about is ethical decision making. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on meeting a client every 2 or 3 weeks. Do you have an opinion about that?
You know, I think that I really believe that we should be meeting with them every 2 weeks. So it is actually one of those things that's really hard for me to balance, right? Because if your caseload is becoming big enough that you can't fit in the 4 a day that you're supposed to have, then you have to bump them to every 3 weeks. You have to think to yourself, okay, are you meeting with them often enough to be able to effectively support them? So then you want to put in more visits than you're supposed to, but you're not allowed to have that many. So you're torn between the needs of your client, your agency's rules, and your own ability to be able to be effective if you have that many people a day. So it's kind of a balancing act. So for me, I would really love to meet with people every week. That's not even a possibility, but every 2 weeks I think should be minimum.
Right.
Yeah.
So have you done that, and have you met resistance from your supervisors or managers?
No, you know what? Actually, my clinical supervisor was great. I was to the point where I was having to book everyone every 3 weeks because I didn't have any space. So I went to her and she stopped all new clients coming into me until I was able to do that.
Right.
So
good.
She actually fully agreed, and then I just stopped taking more clients on until I was able to do that.
Nice. It's nice to have that support.
Totally. Yeah, it's important to have that within an environment like that. Well, everywhere, but especially when you're working with children and families, and it can be a lot of energy going out, right? You need to have some support within your own agency.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
In terms of a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary team, my assumption is you would have psychiatry, maybe a pediatrician, perhaps psych nursing, maybe emergency room, visits or physicians.
Mhm.
Can you tell me a little bit about an interdisciplinary team that you've worked with and how that's been helpful, or how you've overcome barriers if there were any?
Okay. So one time that I actually worked with, I work with an interdisciplinary team now, but one time there was a psychiatrist or psychologist that I worked with, and we were discussing a client, and their lens was really specific, right? So they were kind of these things. And I looked at it like a lot larger, where I was looking at the family, the community, all these different aspects, and it was quite humorous because they looked at me and they were like, "I needed a social worker," and I was like, "Yeah, that's right, you did." Anyways, and we started working together because she was able to look at it very specific sometimes when maybe I didn't look at it as specific, but
Right.
I helped her to broaden her view, and so
Perfect.
together we worked as a really good team to be able to support clients better.
Yeah.
So I think it's having respect for what you each bring,
Yeah.
and working together. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Have you run into ethical dilemmas that maybe are in conflict or pushing the envelope when it comes to our social work code of ethics? What I mean by that is, let's say if we want people to have the opportunity for self-determination, and they've been prescribed medication, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
will you still see clients if they're not taking their meds or if they're med resistant?
Oh, I would absolutely still see them if they're not taking their medication. It can absolutely affect if the therapy is successful, right? Because sometimes people need the medication to be able to come to a place where they're able to do some of the strategies.
Yeah.
But yeah, we would still see clients whether or not they're taking their medication.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about consents? So here in Alberta, with the Alberta College of Social Workers, if kids are 14 years of age or
Mhm.
older and have the capacity to understand the risks and benefits of treatment, then they can sign their own consents. But from my understanding, Alberta Health has a policy that anyone under the age of 18 needs to have parental consent. Do you see that as a conflict or a dilemma of some kind?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, any child that comes in under 18 needs a guardian signature for them to be able to come,
Okay.
unless a mature minor form is completed, right?
Okay.
And in social work, it does say 14, so you have that conflict there. For myself, when I'm going over consent, I do get the guardian to sign, but I also go over it with both the client and the guardian, and I have the client sign because there's a space there for them, right? Which gives them, I think it gives them power in signing it because they're also making the decision to come because it's totally voluntary.
Yeah.
And I go over, everything that we talk about is between us, except for under these circumstances, so they're aware
Yeah.
of all of the rules that I have to follow and when their parents will be informed of things. Like I know before this, as you said, we were talking about self-harm, right? So if you have a 16-year-old that comes in, which happens frequently, where they are self-harming but they don't want their family to know, you can refer back to that. So you're not breaking the trust, right? Because they're trusting you by telling you, but you also told them right in the beginning, and they signed that if there was self-harm, right, you're gonna have to inform the parents.
Right.
So it helps to ensure you still keep that relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we talked previous, relationships and connection, of course, was the
Mhm.
foundation of
Yeah.
your work, and you really had a passion for making sure that that connection was maintained. Absolutely. We talked about self-care, and I brought up self-care because in this field it seems that sometimes it's not given as much airtime, credit as it should, and I'm wondering if you can share with my classmates what you do for self-care.
Yeah, I absolutely can. So, as I was telling you, I didn't even start self-care until I was in my master's program when we started talking about it differently. Because I actually found self-care to be a really irritating topic because people would say, oh, go for a walk, get to nature, take a bath, things that took a whole bunch of time and just weren't sustainable in my life, right? Because I was
Right.
going to school, I was working full time. I am a single parent of a couple children. It was ridiculous to me to think of that.
Right.
But in my master's program, I realized how important it was, because I was really starting to get very tired doing all of these different things, and I wasn't successful really at any of them. So
Right.
I decided, like, okay, so let's look at this differently. I was talking to some of my classmates, and I was like, what brings me joy? Instead of what other people do for self-care, what brings me joy, and what time am I able to give to self-care, right? So what I started doing was, every morning after we were fully ready, my youngest daughter and I would snuggle in bed for 10 minutes before we left. And it ended up being one of the most powerful things that I've done, because I stopped myself from talking. I didn't let my brain go. So I didn't think about all the things that needed to get done. I didn't think about what homework she had to do, nothing. We just held each other, and yeah, it grounded me for the whole day. And so for some people, they'd be like, that is right. But for me, it was different. But it was probably the most powerful self-care thing that I started to do. And then I really wanted to go to the gym, and I could go at lunch without it impacting any other area of my life, right? So I started doing that, and then I started feeling really good about myself, that I was exercising, taking care of myself.
Yeah.
And also being physical, it really does help your mental health,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So those were the two things that I did for myself. And I was able to do that when I stopped thinking that I needed to fit into some self-care box that other people talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was really helpful.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
I really appreciated the story of your daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really a beautiful thing, and I thought I hope more parents do that.
It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Our kids need connection.
What was amazing to me is how much it mattered to her.
Right.
So she would actually come upstairs and say, okay, are you ready? And I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah. And so it was really cool, because it was a time for her to connect with me too. And you're right, I fundamentally believe that connection is the most important part of therapy, because you can use every different therapeutic theory or whatever it might be, and that's fine. But you have to start with connection.
Yeah.
Because if someone doesn't feel connected to you, the rest isn't going to be successful. Right? So, yeah.
So it sounds to me like your practice in healthcare has modeled that core belief that connection is important. So even though you're on interdisciplinary teams and people come from a different lens, you still stay true to who you are and how you want to practice, and you bring your voice to the table, and it sounds like you all cooperate and find a common ground to make sure that the client gets what they need.
Yeah, I think that I'm lucky in my team, because it is very interdisciplinary, lots of different people, but there's so much respect for what each educational stream brings to the table, like understanding that social work brings something different than the others, but it's equally as respected. And so that's really positive.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, good for you. Yeah, excellent. I have really appreciated our time together. I appreciated the hour you spent with me ahead of time. I hope we've shared with my classmates all the valuable insight you've provided for me, and I hope I've covered what I needed to. So we will sign off, and I will watch the rest of you throughout next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.